is going on, you guys? Welcome back to Magic the Gathering Custom Deck Builds Episode 3. Today, we are going to go over a Sultai cycling deck that I had fully built at one point, disassembled to count the collection, and then attempted to rebuild as best I could. But today, we're just going to go over the key cards, the mana base, and some ideas on what you can do with it. So, here we go. So the first card I want to point out here is Vraska Swarm's Eminence. 4 mana for a 5 loyalty planeswalker. Static ability says, whenever a creature you control with Death Touch deals damage to a player or planeswalker, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature. Not super important here, but the -2 is really useful. Says, create a 1/1 Black Assassin creature token with Death Touch, and whenever this creature deals damage to a planeswalker, destroy that planeswalker. Next card, Tyrant's Scorn. It's a blue-black for an instant. Choose one. You can either destroy target creature with converted mana cost 3 or less, or you can return target creature to its owner's hand. So you can either bounce or blow stuff up. Next card is Sultai Rune Mark. 2 and a black for an aura enchantment. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2. Enchanted creature has Death Touch as long as you control a green or blue permanent. This being a Sultai deck, you can do both. Pretty fun card to run in here is Lurching Rot Beast. It's 3 and a black for a 4/2 creature. Has cycling for a black. Discard this card, draw a card. So I run a playset of these in this deck simply for the cycling value. If you don't have the right mana up, you can just cycle it away, draw another card, and get on with the game. Next card on the list, Hieroglyphic Illumination. 3 and a blue for an instant. Says draw 2 cards. Has cycling, 1 blue, pay the blue, discard this card, draw a card. Pretty simple. Still good, you can draw 2 cards off of it, or if you want, you can discard it, pay a blue, and draw 1 card off of it. Either way, it seems alright. Next card is Notion Rain. 1, a blue and a black for a sorcery. Surveil 2, then draw 2 cards. Notion Rain deals 2 damage to you. Next card up is Beneath the Sands. 2 and a green, sorcery. Says, search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. Has cycling for just 2 generic mana, so any mana that you can do with that. Next up, Countervailing Winds, always a super fun card to run in these kinds of decks. Pay 2 and a blue for an instant, counter target spell unless its controller pays 1 for each card in your graveyard. And with a cycling deck, there's going to be tons of cards in your graveyard. And you can also cycle 2 for this card. So cycling 2 generic, discard this card, draw a card. Next important card, the Mending of Dominaria. 3 green for an enchantment Saga. You play it, it goes to the first lore counter. Your next turn after your draw step goes to the second, and then after the draw step, that turn after goes to the third, and then you sacrifice it. Parts 1 and 2 say put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard, then you may return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Useful for getting some stuff back. More importantly, getting stuff out of your deck you don't need. The third part says return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield, then shuffle your graveyard into your library. This triggers before you sacrifice it, so the actual Saga does not get shuffled back in unless you have a separate graveyard recursion method. Nearing the end of the key cards for this list, before we hit mana base, is Ronus' Last Stand. 2 green for a sorcery. Says create a 5/4 green snake creature token. Lands you control don't untap during your next untap step. Essentially, you get a 2 mana 5/4, which is already really good, but you don't get mana next turn unless you play one that comes in untapped. The last key card is Regenesis. 3 green for an instant. Says return up to 2 target permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. So you can get lands, you can get enchantments, creatures, anything that stays on the field, but you cannot get the spells. Now to go over mana base, which is kind of interesting. Of course, you're going to have your standard basics, your swamps, your forests, your islands. You're going to have a couple of interesting lands in here, a couple dual lands. So, Dimir Guild Gates, Golgari Guild Gates, Simic Guild Gates, Dismal Backwater just for some life gain if you want. And then we get to the interesting lands. You have to run, in here at least, Desert of the Indomitable. That's the green desert from Hour of Devastation. Enters the battlefield tapped. Tap it, add a green. Has cycling for 1 and a green. Discard this card, draw a card. Some other fun lands you can put in are Heshep Oasis. It's a desert. Tap, add colorless. Tap, pay 1 life, add a green. Pay 1, a green and a green. Sacrifice a desert, so it doesn't have to be this one. Target creature gets +3/+3 until end of turn. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. So good for pumping stuff during your turn. And the last one is Ifnir Deadlands. It's another desert. Tap, add a colorless. Tap, pay a life, add a black to your pool. 2 black and a black. Tap, sacrifice a desert. Same kind of thing as the last one. But this says, put 2 -1/-1 counters on target creature an opponent controls. Activate this ability only time you could cast a sorcery. So it's good for getting rid of small, cheap creatures. That's about it. That'll do it for me. If you enjoyed what you saw, consider subscribing. Tell your friends if you have friends who play Magic. Thanks for coming around. See you next time.